How are you?
Find it on Amazon?
Yeah, you can get it on Amazon, or you can get it here at the B&H.
Oh, the phone, the camera place.
Yeah, it's like a local camera company, like a camera
right
shop.
here?
Yeah, it's on the corner. Yeah, you can get it there too. Awesome, man. Take care. Have a good night. All right, guys. Good to see you. Happy Sunday. We are reporting live here from the Hudson Yards. It is a beautiful night. Finally stopped raining. That's the good news. But it is Sunday, July 16th, 2023, and it's going to be a pretty big week on Wall Street. You could pretty much say this is the start of earnings season. Next week, we are going to have many notable earnings reports from the big financial companies. I think we're going to hear from Bank of America, Morgan Stanley, Discover Financial, and I think to end out the week, we're going to hear from American Express. Now, it's very important during earnings season that we pay attention to the financials because we can sort of gain clues into the overall health of the American consumer, particularly through credit card spend, right? If you think about a lot of the big credit card issuers, Bank of America is pretty big. Discover Financial is huge as it relates to entry-level credit cards, but also JP Morgan Chase as well, and obviously American Express. So it's going to be very important to take a look at those. We are also going to be having ASML reporting earnings, and we are going to hear some home builder data, as well as hear from the National Association of Realtors as they release their existing home sales. Now, this is in light of a very high interest rate environment. If you look at, let's actually look that up right now. I think it's changed probably over the weekend. If you go to CNBC.com/bonds and you look at the 30-year fixed rate mortgage, according to CNBC, the average 30-year fixed rate right now actually came down a little bit, 6.89%. Still pretty high, right, if you compare it to year-over-year levels, and obviously much, much higher than 2021 when many people were getting 3% 30-year fixed. Now, earlier last week, we actually broke into the sevens yet again. We had a 7 handle on the 30-year fixed, but bond yields came down a little bit. Since we're talking about bonds, before we get started, we might as well take a look at the yield curve here in the United States. If you look at the 10-year U.S. Treasury, we're yielding about 3.83%. If you look at the 1-year Treasury, about 5.337%, which is pretty significant. Look at the dog here. It's a service dog. Looks like a chocolate lab. I actually used to have a yellow lab. Anyway, but yeah, that's kind of crazy. Think about that. 1-year U.S. Treasury, 5.33%. That actually came down a little bit. So yields across the curve has come down a little, but still, to go to Treasury Direct and be able to have almost a 5.5% risk-free rate of return is pretty good, right? That is pretty good. So savers are once again being rewarded in the United States. Obviously, futures are open. It's about 9 o'clock at night. So let's take a look at not only the S&P 500 E-mini futures, but we'll take a look at the Dow 30 and the NASDAQ 100. But first, let's take a look at crude oil. If you look at ticker symbol CL, we're trading at about $74 a barrel in terms of crude, and we are being rejected right at the 200-day moving average. Now, the ticker symbol for the S&P 500 E-mini futures is ES. We opened about flat. We're down about 6 points. S&P is trading at 45.30. If we look at the Dow, the YM E-mini futures contract, trading at about 34.634. Pretty much markets are flat at the open, down about 44 points. And then last but not least, the one and only NASDAQ 100. A lot of the high beta stocks are in there. NASDAQ's trading at 15,675, and we opened up down about 18 points. All right, guys, let me go ahead and close up my laptop here. Once again, we are reporting live directly outside of the brand new Moynihan train hall. You can see the New Yorker Hotel sign right above. And I think we're gonna walk through Hell's Kitchen today because we forgot to do it last night. We got sidetracked. So I'm gonna go ahead, close up my laptop, get my stuff situated, then we will say hello to everybody in the chat and we'll get started. Hopefully you guys had a good weekend. Just so I can see these surroundings. Maybe go street view. Street view. Yeah, it should be one of these restaurants right in here. You should look at it. It's either here or down here. They built a lot of restaurants here. So yeah, if you just do a lap, you'll see it. It's somewhere in there. There's like thousands of restaurants in there. Thanks, guys. Have a good night. All right. Hey, Steph UH is here. What's up? Michael Joseph, God bless. This is 2 Manhattan West. Beautiful, beautiful Class A office buildings here at the Hudson Yards. I see Myra King says, good evening, Tom and chat. Thank you, Myra. Elijah, good to see you, Charles. Charles, but you're absolutely right. For those of you who don't know, there was this crazy monster murderer, right? Serial killer on Long Island. And turns out they caught the guy in Massapequa Park, which just happens to be where I'm from. Now, I think his house was on Michigan Avenue, which is very, very close to where I am. So very strange. I think the guy is, well, again, it's all alleged, right? I don't know anything. I haven't really been following it, but, you know, allegedly the guy killed tons of people. I think 10 people, and dumped their bodies all along Gilgo Beach out on Long Island. The guy was an architect. He would commute on the Long Island Railroad on the Babylon line into Penn Station. Very creepy stuff. It's horrible. It's horrible. But thank God they got him, right? I'm assuming it's him. Obviously, it's presumed innocent until proven guilty, but you know, I trust the process will play out, and hopefully he will be convicted. This is the Hudson Yards area of New York. It is beautiful. This is a really cool shot, very unique. This building with the sort of triangle sticking out of the side, it's called The Edge, and it's one of the most sought after and newest observation decks in the city. Really cool views, and I think it has a glass floor. If anybody's been to the CN Tower in Toronto, when I was a kid, this is way back, really the only thing I remember about my visit to Toronto is standing on that glass floor in the CN Tower. And they have one here in New York. Now, they did a great job here at the Hudson Yards. Tons of outdoor seating, really beautiful. Harry Connor, what's up? Good to see you. Sabrina Fair, welcome, Wellshine After Rain. Sparks Carnival's here. Have a lot of corporate earnings coming out, particularly in the financials. And I think, you know, many times people, I should say, the public can overlook just how important it is to really, really pay attention when our banks and financial institutions report their corporate earnings for a number of reasons. But hold on, look at this. That's a reflection of the Empire State Building, right in the Whole Foods in the Peloton building. That is so cool. The color scheme on the Empire tonight, it's all rainbow colors. I'll show you. As I turn around, check this out. You know what, actually I'm not gonna turn around just yet. There's a better view. Once you're right outside the Whole Foods and you turn around, arguably one of the greatest shots of the Empire State Building. You can see a lot of people actually right there taking photos, but I'm not too sure why the color scheme. Now, I'll tell you something real quick. New Year's Eve, they usually have that color scheme, but I'm not sure why they're doing it tonight. Usually it'll say it on the website. But wow, that is looking good. What do you guys think of the color scheme tonight at the Empire State Building? Like a rainbow color, and then you have the spire with the flickering lights. Pretty cool. Cash NYC is not a big fan of Whole Foods. It's a very expensive place. Very expensive place. I think the quality is good, but the most expensive Whole Foods by far is actually in Miami, Florida, in downtown Miami. Dave Morrison is here. Lena Sandoval, good to see you. Sparks Carnival says, Tom, U.S. retail sales come out Tuesday. Forecast is 0.5%, which I think is too optimistic. Jamie Dimon is warning of a consumer slowdown burned through a lot of that COVID stimulus. Yeah, I mean, you know, how long have people been talking about that, right? In anticipation of the American consumer slowing down. But if there's one thing that we've seen over the last year, it's that the American consumer is damn resilient. Consumer spending has been very, very high, and I would say healthy, for lack of a better term. I'll quickly show you guys the Hudson Yards new Moynihan extension, and then we'll head back into the city. But you know, just look at a lot of the hospitality spending. I was actually talking to one of my good buddies again today that works at the Park Hyatt Hotel in New York, which just so happens to be inside 157, which is that very notable building on New York City's Billionaires Row. And it's about 80% occupied this whole weekend. So if you think about the occupancy, 80% occupied, and the cheapest room in the hotel is $1,100 for the cheapest room for one night. So consumers are out spending on experiences. Now they have shifted, to your point. A lot of consumers have been shifting what they're spending on, right? So you have two components, obviously the goods and then services, but people are really spending on services and experiences. They're going out to eat, they're going out to the restaurants, they're booking hotels, they're booking mini vacations. So consumers are still spending. And I think we'll see a lot of that data show through. Maybe we could use, you know, Discover Financial, for example, is reporting earnings this week. I also think Amex, American Express, will also be reporting earnings on Friday. So potentially we could use a lot of that data as a proxy of the health of the American consumer. Now this is overlooking the Hudson Yards. I think this is a tennis court or like a pickleball court. But the new extension, it's called the Moynihan extension, starts all the way at that red tree over there. You can sort of see some people walking around, and it loops all the way around this building, sort of goes in like an L shape, and then connects right here at this bridge, and then leads you right into the Whole Foods entrance. So kind of cool. Very cool. Hey, Bree Grams, what's up? Good to see you. Oh, the LT Prod. Is it really a new game? Never heard of it. I've heard of pickleball. Tons of people have been playing that. They actually made an exclusive area in Central Park that's solely dedicated to pickleball, which is kind of crazy. Look at this shot. This looks exactly like Gotham City, something you'd see out of a Batman movie. This is a cool view too. This is looking uptown. So from here you could actually see all the way to the Upper West Side of Manhattan. Hey, MS or MFS, suspending as citizens or tourists or geopolitical activists. Who's spending, what and where? Well, I think it's a lot of tourist activity, especially Manhattan is picking up a lot. I've noticed a lot of tourists in the city. But I think you still have that pent-up demand from COVID. If you lock people down for a year and a half, you're going to have this huge surge in pent-up in demand. And look, this is the way I think about consumer spending and consumer sentiment. And we're creatures of habit, right? Ooh, you're right. Whoever said paddle, you're correct. It says reserve paddle. Must be a new game. I don't know. To me, when these people are playing it, it looks like tennis or pickleball. Maybe it's like a combination of the two. But MFS, here's how I think about consumer spending and consumer sentiment, in my opinion. Humans are creatures of habit, and there's actually been a lot of studies done. I think the most famous study was done by Harvard Business School as it relates to lifestyle creep. Has anybody heard of that term before, lifestyle creep? Now, if you haven't, essentially what lifestyle creep means is, let's say if you start off, out of college or something, and you're making $50,000, right, which is sort of the average what everybody makes when they're coming out of college. The rule states that as you move up in income, so let's say maybe after 5 years, you get a couple promotions, and then you're making, I don't know, $120,000 a year. This is just an example. The studies will show that most people will spend in accordance of their income, right? So most people will not keep their spending the same amount as when they were making 50 as it relates to when they were making 100. They always creep up and move up. So as more money comes in, maybe they get a nicer apartment, maybe they buy a nicer house, maybe they get a car, right? Maybe they lease a nice car or something. So the way I think about consumer spending in the United States is exactly that, but I think it was exacerbated by the coronavirus, because everybody was told to stay home, right? They even gave out stimulus checks, and people who didn't qualify for those stimulus checks sort of got an inadvertent stimulus check. And what I mean by that is you probably got some sort of a raise since the pandemic started to now. Maybe you changed companies, and if you changed companies, the data shows that you probably are making about 20% more had you stayed at your original company, right? And as people are making more, right, and if you look at all the inflation data that is coming out, one of the, I should say, factors of inflation that is becoming very, very sticky is wage inflation, right? Wage inflation is still very hot, which means wages are going up. But savings is going up, but not to the rate that you would expect, right? So that means people who are making more money are also spending more money now. And I think that's why a lot of economists and analysts on the street have been a bit surprised at the resiliency of the US consumer. Now, does anybody agree or disagree or have a different take on that? Because the way I like to think about it is, look at people within your sphere of influence, right? Maybe look at your brother, your sister, or your friends from college. Generally speaking, people tend to be right in line with their lifestyle creep, in my view. Hey, Robert, thank you so much for your email, by the way. I'm definitely going to be reaching out to you when I go to San Francisco, 100%. Thank you for that offer, by the way. Hey, Dan Sang, what's up? This is Tom. Some people are just really bad at personal finance. I recently had to lend $4,000 to my friend because he needed extra cash to rent a new apartment, and he makes $100,000 a year. Whoa, dude, damn. I have a rule. Dan, you're probably a lot nicer than me. I don't lend money to friends. That's my one rule. I do not lend money to friends under any circumstance, because that's the best way to ruin a friendship, in my opinion. So I do not lend money to friends under any circumstance, in my opinion, from the stuff I've seen over the years. Guys, look at how unique this is. So this is the actual connection bridge from the Moynihan Train Hall, West 30th Street, all the way to the Hudson Yards. Now, these do look like steel I-beams, but they're not. It's actually wood. It's like this compressed wood, and it actually smells really good too. Yeah, Western Mass Dave says lending money to friends, very hard lesson to learn. I want to point out this building really quick. Now, this is 35 Hudson Yards. In 2 weeks, I'm actually scheduled to preview this building. It is an ultra-luxury condominium right on New York City's Hudson Yards, but it also doubles as the new Equinox Hotel. So I'm sure you guys have heard of the Equinox Gym. Well, they have an exclusive hotel right there at 35 Hudson Yards. Hey, Ben Cunningham, lending money to family is a hard lesson to learn too. Yeah, I think I would personally rather help people out in a non-monetary way. I'll help you out by guiding you in the right direction. I'll introduce you to, maybe a manager at a company to help you get a job. But everything always gets sticky, right, when you start dishing out money to friends. Now, I think family's different. Like, you got to take care of your mom and dad and all that stuff. Like, that's just normal family stuff. But like friends, hey, especially the same age, I mean, I don't know. I can't help you out with money, but I can help you out with connections. Hey, Arsenal fan 13. Thank you so much for your very kind $10 donation. Says, yep, very familiar with the lifestyle creep. A former Goldman Sachs employee in London explains this in his video called Your Problem is that you think everyone in banking is rich. Wow, I never, let me take a screenshot of that actually. But thank you for that comment, Arsenal fan 13. Yeah, it's a big problem, and you'd be surprised. I'll tell you a quick story and then we'll sort of move on from that topic, but it is an important topic. My CPA is a very good friend of mine, who just so happens to be my CPA, I should say. And he works with individuals in New York City who make very good incomes. Okay, you're talking about combined household incomes of 3 million plus. But it seems, hey, oh, thanks, man. But it seems as if, even if you have those, really high lucrative incomes, right? Household income, 3 million plus, maybe the husband is a banker, the wife is a lawyer in big law. Thanks. In big law or something like that. You always notice, or at least this is what he tells me. He's like, you'll notice that they'll have $2,000 left over for additional savings at the end of the month. So their mortgage is $40,000 a month. The kids' private schools, right, are sometimes $25,000 a year for each kid. They have a chauffeur or a family driver that takes the kids to school to and from. They have the nanny that they pay $80,000 a year. So, I mean, the lifestyle creep is real. I mean, it's not just opinionated either. If you look up the Harvard Business study, Harvard Business School did a study on it. So, this is why I always preach, if you can pay the price today, if you will, and just save your money and invest it in like a sacred account where it grows and you can't touch it, you're gonna build those habits. So, I don't know, I think that's also another reason, this dog is adorable here, I think that's also another reason why a lot of people underestimate the cycles in a bull market. They always underestimate how long a bull market can last almost every time. And I think that's built into the DNA of an American consumer. Americans consume. And I don't think anybody could argue with that. Hey, Richard Vogel, what's up? Kyle is here, says, hey man, any negative effects you've noticed since cannabis legalization? It's actually a really interesting question. I don't know. My personal opinion is I'm for the legalization and decriminalization of cannabis. I don't smoke weed, right? I never have. It's just not my thing. Gives me a headache. But I think it's something, this is what I'll say about it, because I think it's an important topic and it does relate to the economy. What's happening now in the United States that is a travesty, that's so horrible, is all of this fentanyl. And you have the cartels and all these dealers and all these scumbags essentially lacing these drugs with fentanyl. And that's killing people to the tune of, I think, 80,000 Americans died last year of fentanyl overdoses. So how can you, I guess, inadvertently cut the middleman, which would be all the illegal dealers, out of the deal, is to make it legal and make a government agency to regulate, marijuana sales. I think that would be safer. I mean, you're not going to stop people from smoking weed. It's just not going to happen. So I think we're at the point where, how can we just make it safe for people, right? Like, think about it. Would you rather buy your marijuana from some random guy right on a street, or would you rather go into a government regulated store where you know you're going to get a product that was, ethically sourced, grown ethically, and it's not laced with any type of, craziness? That's sort of how I think about it. On the downside, I would say, in terms of just my observation here in New York, I've been seeing a lot of those smoke shops pop up virtually on every corner in New York. And from my experience and having friends who are police officers, those stores always breed bad activity, bad actors, almost always. So I don't know, that's how I think about it. It's a tough call, it's a sticky situation. I don't know, what is your take on it? I'm more interested in what you guys have to say about it. I'm sure there's some people in here that are more educated on the topic than I am. We're actually gonna head to Madison Square Garden now. Hey, Michael Cray says, legalize and regulate. The state of Arkansas has raked in $160 million in tax revenues since 2007, which is great for a relatively poor state. That does sound really great, actually. Yeah, I mean, Michael makes a good point. And look, I'm not an expert, okay? I'm just answering a question I read in the chat, but that's sort of how I think about it. Would we rather have just illegal operations going on and, potentially where it's dangerous? Or would you rather just have it be normal, like sort of like how the FDA regulates, our food and drugs and anything that else goes to market? If you go to Chipotle, everything is temperature controlled, right? That you have to answer to the health department. I think it should be the same thing with marijuana sales. So it's ethically grown, it's ethically sourced, it's not being smuggled with child labor, slave labor, because that's real. They do that through our southern border. And look, I think it'll raise a lot of tax revenues for the states, like Michael said, so maybe it's a good idea. Hey, Lizzie says, people smoke and drive here in California at a restricted walk. Yeah, I mean, maybe you'll just have to have like designated smoking areas, right? No smoking inside. Sort of like what they did almost as of recent. Now, who here, not to date anybody, but who here is old enough to remember when you were allowed to smoke inside your office building, like at your desk? Imagine sitting at your cubicle and it was legal to smoke inside and smoke at your cubicle. Is anybody old enough to remember that? Now, I'm not old enough to remember that, but a lot of my coworkers used to tell me stories about how they would literally be smoking cigarettes at their desk in the office at their cubicle, which is kind of crazy. Hey, Blues Writers says, would you feel as comfortable with your CPAs or lawyers' work? product if he smoked a lot of weed? I don't know. I mean, I think if my CPA does good work, right, which he does, he's like a savior. I think he's worth every penny. And I somehow found out that he was smoking a lot of weed, I probably wouldn't care. But if I saw like any degradation in the quality of his work, well, then maybe there could be some correlation there. Perhaps. Cindy Foley says, I remember that. Wow, pot of golds is end airplanes. How wild is that? Let's stop and think about that for a moment. People were allowed to smoke on airplanes. Like, what a horrible, horrible idea that is. I wouldn't be able to fly. I'm super sensitive to smoke, particularly cigarette smoke and weed smoke. I can't do it. I think I would just pass out. Wow, look at that, guys. That is an awesome shot of the top of the Empire State Building. Hey, Timothy Gray's here. Says, Tom, do you think it is hypocritical that some states are promoting marijuana consumption but actively working against tobacco consumption? It seems disingenuous, really. It kind of does. But again, that's all, I mean, we could have a 5-hour stream on that. You know, this is what I'll say. It is crazy to me that cigarettes are legal. It's just beyond crazy. There's a direct link, this is from smoking cigarettes and getting cancer. There's no direct link from smoking marijuana and getting cancer. So one could argue, well, how come big tobacco's legally able to rake in billions of dollars a year, hawking a product that kills millions of Americans a year? I don't know. And look, I don't smoke either, but I do see Timothy's point to say that's a little bit hypocritical. I guess you could say lobbying, right? Probably the big tobacco probably spends a lot of money in lobbying, a lot of donations. I don't know. It does seem hypocritical to me, though, to answer your question. Hey, Brad's Brains. I once sat in the smoking section as a young kid on a plane, guessing it was the only seat. That's actually hilarious too, Brad's Brain. So you're in a little tin box in the sky and they say, oh, no worries. The smoking section is in the back, non-smoking in the front. Like, that's gonna separate any of the space. I mean, the smoke fills the entire plane anyway. That's hilarious. Hey, Lizzie, thank you so much for your very kind $10 donation. I appreciate it very, very much. Thank you for supporting. J49, suspend the pot tax money correctly. Schools need laptops and computers. I agree with that. I mean, you know, in a perfect world, right? And this is actually a good conversation to have because we were talking about consumer spending, right? And what was the main correlation with consumer spending? Lifestyle creep. So as people make more money, they spend more. It's the same thing with our government, unfortunately, and Congress. We don't have a revenue problem in this country. It's a spending problem, right? So I think it was J49 that just said that in the chat. Yes, we should tax marijuana sales, but we should do a substitution as opposed to an addition. Does that make sense? This is a B&H photo. I just wanted to point that out real quick. The guy at the beginning of the live stream was asking me about it. This is one of the most famous video, photo, and audio stores in New York. Great store, very cool in there. I shop there from time to time. But unfortunately, with the way our government is, we just spend and spend and spend. The more money we bring in, the more money we spend. So in a perfect world, you know, maybe what we could do, especially as it goes state by state, depending on how much money, you know, taxing sales of marijuana brings in, you could offset that and maybe give your citizens a little bit of a break as it relates to personal income taxes. I think that would be great in a perfect world, but I'm not sure that it'll ever get there. Hey, type usernames. As Warren Buffett said, if you made a law that lawmakers couldn't get reelected, if we have a deficit, the budget would be fixed immediately. I've never heard that Buffett quote, but that is, yeah, man, that is too true. That is definitely too true, man. Jeez. Yeah, I mean, not to make the whole stream about, drugs and narcotics. I'm not an expert in it, right? But, if you were going to ask me what I think, that's sort of what I think. So this is outside of the brand new Moynihan Train Hall. This is one of the main entrances. Looks really, really nice. So this is as you come out of the Long Island Railroad, and then boom, look at that. That is what you're greeted with. A beautiful view of the Empire State Building. Absolutely fantastic. That's actually where we're gonna head. Wow, Lizzie's is finally at my new house in Texas from California. Everybody here noticed my license plate and asked me why. You said it's cheaper. Wow, well, congratulations on your move. That is awesome. Yeah, moving is definitely a big job. It's a big to-do. So I'm glad you're all settled in your new place. Speaking of moving and speaking of housing, on Tuesday, we're gonna hear from the National Association of Home Builders as they release their housing market index for July. Now, forecasts are for about a 57 reading, right? So if you want to go to the National Association of Home Builders website, you could sort of look at the previous month's report and do some comparative analysis there. But if that's the case, that would be 2 points higher than the June reading, which makes sense. We'll talk about why in a minute. But the index has risen for 6 straight months. For 6 straight months. The National Association of Home Builders Index. Now, we talked about how we can use equities as a leading indicator in and of itself. And what is one of the most successful, or the groups that are leading the market? And it's actually been home builders, right? Take a look at, we'll name a couple here on the stream just so you guys could look. Maybe if you have your Bloomberg terminal pulled up, tradingview.com, or MarketSmith. If you look at KB Home, if you look at Toll Brothers, if you look at Pulte. Oh, hey man, what's up? Hey, good to see you. Hey man, good to see you. Thanks for watching. Oh, awesome, man. Hey, have a good night, dude. Thanks, man. Nice meeting you. Take care. Drive safe. You guys watching us on the bike. That's so cool. But yeah, if you look at all those home builder stocks, they've been leading the market. And that's pretty much to the contrary of almost every single analyst on the street, especially people who are on Main Street. They would think, wait, if we have mortgage rates that have gone from 3% now to 7%, right? If we want to be exact, the exact number is 6.8%. CNBC's data that was updated Friday, the average 30-year fixed is 6.8%. You would think, well, why would you want to be long home builders? Well, I think the question there could be answered with one word, and that is supply, or lack thereof, if you will, right? And if you're an analyst or you're an economist, you think, okay, if the United States of America has a housing crisis, which we do, right? Some people don't like to call it that. I think it's appropriate to call it that. The United States of America, right? And it's not exclusive to the US. I think we have a housing crisis in this country. We need to be building way more units, and affordable units, right? Not these, billionaires row buildings in the sky, but like affordable housing, right? I think everybody would agree with that statement. But where is much of that supply going to come from? It's going to come from home builders. So again, as it relates to interest rates, if you look at all of the participants who have a mortgage in the United States right now, over 87% of all people who have mortgages, their interest rate is below 5%. 87% of people that have an outstanding balance on their mortgage, their debt is below 5%. So that is a major problem as it relates to the potential of supply coming on the market. Hold on, let me cross here. Wow, that's an awesome shot of the Empire. Hey, Ryan Beck, what's up, man? So the problem isn't just affordable housing, it's people that want affordable housing in highly desirable areas. It's a good point. It's actually a really good point. Very good point. But the problem with rates, right, is that we've been in a decade now. It's been a decade long of ZIRP. And ZIRP is an acronym that stands for Zero Interest Rate Policy. So if you have all of these people who have very, very low interest rates and very low payments on their mortgage, well, it's going to be very, very hard to get those people to part ways with their homes, right? Or to list their homes on the market, list their apartments, their condos, whatnot, because they're saying, even if I sell at a profit in this market, I'm going to have to go right back out in the marketplace and compete for too few homes when money costs me about double what it cost me in 2021, even in 2015. Now, the next question is this, as we sort of play down the assembly line here. What could potentially be a catalyst, right? Again, potential catalysts that will allow inventory to come on the market. In my opinion, and I want to know what your opinion is, but if somebody were to ask me, my opinion would be if unemployment were to spike, right? Because think about the hierarchy of needs. If somebody's in a really tight spot, and let's say this person has a $200,000 stock portfolio, and they have a house that's worth $500,000 that they owe $300,000 on, if they lose their job, are they going to sell the house first, or are they going to sell the stocks first? They're going to obviously sell the stocks first, because you can't live in your stocks, right? Especially if you're raising a family, you got to have a roof over your head. So the only way that I see a significant, and I mean significant amount of supply coming onto this market, and again, I'm talking in generalities here, so broad-based across the United States, is if we have some sort of major economic event that throws a lot of people out of work, and in which case they can't pay their mortgages, or they're forced to sell their homes to raise equity. Here's the problem. Everybody knows that the unemployment rate is the lowest it's pretty much ever been in the United States. It's about 3.5%. I think it actually may be a little bit lower. So I don't know. It's a very interesting situation the Federal Reserve has put us in. And I think the main issue is that we've been, ooh, man, that's a lot of roaches. Oh, I won't show you guys that, but there was literally over that grate there, like an inch thick of roaches. I forgot what I was even talking about now. That's all right. All right, let me catch up on some of the chats as we wait for the red light here. We're now outside of Macy's, which is the largest, I should say the world's largest department store. Tom Chase Jr. says that doesn't include people looking for work. Ken Brockton, what's up, Ken? Let me scroll back. It says supply could also be driven by climate and political changes, combined with expansion in remote work. The South and West are becoming hotter, says Ken Brockton. That's interesting. It's a good point. What else we got here? Big Dog Pound 1 says the mortgage rates need to drop as well. I think that would do more harm than good. Hey, Fire Medic 22 says, Tom, they're building hundreds of thousands of new homes as fast as they can in Phoenix, Arizona, and Las Vegas, Nevada. Most people are coming from California. New York, Seattle, Portland, Oregon, and 80% pay cash on their new builds. Wow, really? Is that the statistic? 80% are paying cash on those new builds? Now, I'm not an expert in the Sunbelt market. I guess that's what you can call it, right? Like Arizona through there. But maybe we'll do a little bit of comparative analysis, but I actually think this particular comparative analysis may be inappropriate for the conversation, but we'll do it anyway. In 2008, right, during the financial crisis, the markets that went down the most, I believe in this order, and again, if it's not the exact order, I apologize. I just can't remember off the top of my head. I think it was Miami, Florida went down the most, then Tampa, Florida, Phoenix, Arizona, and Las Vegas, Nevada. I think those were the biggest four declines. Now, why might that have been? Well, you think about the speculative excess and irrational exuberance of the time, right? Leading up to the great financial crisis, those particular markets tend to be purchases for third and fourth and fifth homes, right? Not primary residences. So people were speculating on the real estate market just because it was nice weather. Oh, it's Miami. Oh, it's, I could play golf in Arizona, right? Vegas, Nevada, right? Las Vegas, I don't even need to explain that. But I think the main difference here is that you're seeing the migration trends, right? Ken Brockton said something very interesting. He says, I think migration trends could potentially impact supply as well. And over the course of the last 5 years, many people have actually been moving to places like Austin, Texas, Tampa, Florida, Miami, Florida, Vegas as their primary residence, and not to just speculate on the real estate market. Now, the question is that staying power going to be real? And to answer that question, I think you need to look at job growth and wage growth. Miami has done really well to attract good paying jobs. Back in the day, you couldn't say the same, right? I came out of college roughly 2018, I think. Let me think. It was either 17 or 18. Anyway, it doesn't matter. If I were to have gone to Miami, Florida directly out of college, I would have been making significantly less money than if I had comparison to New York, right? But over the last couple of years, Austin has done a really good job with attracting a lot of tech startup jobs, Miami as well. So I don't know. It's possible that those areas have also run up a lot, and they have in terms of price appreciation. I think you'll see a correction there, but I don't think you'll see a sizable correction like you did in 2008, just because there's more jobs and more infrastructure there, right? If you think about the CHIPS and Science Act that was just passed by the Biden administration, there's a lot of major semiconductor companies that are building big chip fabrication plants in states like Arizona, right? Those are going to bring a lot of really good jobs. So, yeah, Tom G's is still not high-paying jobs. I don't know, man. I mean, I have a lot of banker friends who have got a lot of big exit opportunities at hedge funds near Palm Beach, Miami, that are making, high six-figure range. You're talking about, 400,000, 450. Those are pretty good jobs. But I do also agree with you that you can't really compare it to something like New York or Boston, right? You're always going to have the big top brackets for salaries in places like New York City, in places like Boston, San Francisco, right? But I think over time it's getting there. But you're right, Tom. I don't think it's there just yet. Okay, this is another great shot of the Empire State Building. If you guys are enjoying the live stream so far tonight, feel free to leave a like on the video and click the subscribe button if you're new. We usually start these streams around 8:30. We were a little bit late tonight, which I apologize for. Tim G, sorry about that. So his brain's still in Boston and New York City. That's true. And another interesting thing about that, and sort of why New York, let's just say the East Coast, right? Just so we include all those major cities. The Northeast, I'll say. The Northeast and like Southern California. It's because they have a very, very good feeder industry, right? Think about all the Ivy League schools that are in the Northeast. Just in New York alone, right? In New York City, you have Columbia University. If you go about 2 hours upstate New York, you have Cornell University, which is another Ivy League school that I believe is in Ithaca, New York. Massachusetts, you have Harvard. You know, as you go up the coast, you have Yale, everything like that. So these are essentially feeder schools into the best and brightest companies in the best cities in the world, such as New York and Boston. So there's a great talent pool to pick from. And that's why I also think, to your point, the southern states like South Florida, particularly Fort Lauderdale, Miami, over the last 10 years have been lagging. But they've caught up significantly, and I mean very significantly, over the past couple of years. But you're right, education is always going to be number one. And as it relates to real estate, generally speaking, you want to try to buy real estate around big educational institutions, not only in terms of colleges, but also public schools, high school, K through 12, and the like. Yeah, Tim G says yes, top 7 of the top 20 schools in the world are in the Northeast. Yeah, you're 100% correct, man. You're 100,000% correct for that. Also, you have a lot of the other target schools, right? I mean, just on the island of Manhattan, you have some great schools here. NYU, Pace University, you have all of CUNY, right? The whole CUNY system. Baruch, which I didn't get into, but that's all right. You know, let's actually, you know what? I really want to try to go through Koreatown again. Because I don't feel like I showed you guys enough the last time when we got interrupted by that crazy guy, unfortunately. But Koreatown's a blast. It's a great neighborhood. I think it left a negative impression on a lot of the viewers before, and I don't want that impression to be in your head because that's an anomaly. So I think we'll just do a quick lap through Koreatown. I'll show you some of the nice restaurants over there, and then we'll head back up. All right, maybe we'll make this light. Maybe we'll go around the other way, just because it's a little bit too crowded here. Wow, in Vegas, the average home is $320,000. Oh, this is this Lucid Motors? Hold on. All right, any car guys or girls in the chat can help me out. I think this is a Lucid motor car, right? No, Ethan, it's not a Volvo. Polestar? Not a Lucid? Ah, okay. I don't know why I thought it looked like Lucid. I don't know, in downtown Miami, they have that Lucid Motors showroom, and they kind of look similar. It's definitely an EV. I guess it doesn't matter. Now, I mean, if you want to continue our conversation about housing, that's going to bring you to Thursday. So we sort of covered early in the week, this week on Wall Street, you're going to have a lot of corporate earnings, right? Particularly from the big investment banks. So Monday, or Tuesday really, you're going to have Bank of America, Morgan Stanley, BNY Mellon, PNC Financial. So again, we could use that sort of as a proxy for the health of the U.S. consumer. But also, we could track deal flow on Wall Street. Now, it's very important, and we've covered this almost to the point of ad nauseum, but one of the main, I would say, standouts that happened to major investment banks, right? Like Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, during the pandemic, right, 2021, is that deal activity exploded. We'll wait for the FDNY truck to go by. Hopefully everybody's all right. But in 2021, deal flow on Wall Street exploded in two categories. Number one, IPOs, initial public offerings, and SPACs, the special purpose acquisition companies, which I actually wrote many articles telling investors to stay away from a lot of those SPACs. In my view, I think a lot of them were frauds, particularly the ones ran by our pal Chamath, allegedly, but that's my take. But number two, a lot of M&A activity, right? Mergers and acquisitions. And if you think about how investment banks make their money, it's mainly from fee income, right? So the more deals that they do, they make money on the fees from taking companies public, equity underwriting fees, merger and acquisition fees. And that was mainly because there was so much economic stimulus, right? You had the Federal Reserve flood the marketplace with money. The Federal Reserve went on a bond buying binge, purchasing not only US Treasuries, but mortgage-backed securities. The Fed balance sheet expanded and ballooned, and that provided a lot of liquidity in the marketplace on top of all the cheap debt. So who remembers turning on CNBC, Bloomberg, open up the Wall Street Journal in 2021, and every day there was a new company going public. And all of these companies, well, I shouldn't say all, a lot of these companies were no earnings. Some of them were even pre-revenue nonsense. But the investment banks don't care about that. The investment banks will take anything public that they want, just as long as they're raking in those sweet management fees or those sweet deal fees. That's why you had Goldman Sachs record year in 2021, these in percent, from 2021 to 2022. And I'll give you guys a quick tip here, a quick pointer, before I show you this amazing view of the Empire State Building. It is most important, okay? If you could just write this down, this is super critical. It is most important to pay close attention to companies that are able to go public during very, very brutal bear markets and when the IPO market is essentially closed for business. Because during a bull market, every investor under the sun wants to invest money. It's like this, it's euphoric super cycle of a bull, right? So a lot of low quality companies go public, and that's why you had that SPAC boom of special purpose acquisition companies. But I would take some time out this week to do your due diligence on companies that went public in 2022 when the IPO market was essentially closed for business. Companies that are able to raise money and go public during bear markets tend to be the cream of the crop, high quality premium product of companies who have great earnings potential, and extremely high revenue growth, as well as fantastic gross margins most of the time. So key rule of thumb is don't get caught up in the hype when companies are going public left and right, because those are usually the junk. The premium quality can usually be found if they can become public during bear markets. So it's going to be interesting to see when Bank of America reports, when Morgan Stanley reports, if the IPO market is starting to open back up, if companies, the M&A market is starting to open back up. I think that's going to be very important. Very, very important to look for. This is a I think this is another 5-star hotel here. Let me catch up on some of the comments. Hey, Laytha is here. Good to see you, Laytha. Steph UH, good to see you. Karina Thompson, I see Penelope is here. Jimmy Anderson, the one and only. Good to see you, Jimmy. Hopefully you're having a good Sunday night. Hopefully you had a good weekend. Ryan Beck says this is a McLaren. How much do these cars cost if you had to guesstimate? Hey, Madison 32 says Tom, develops homes and communities in New Jersey, Boston, Arizona, and Florida. Ticker symbol LSEA. Very cool. I'll check it out. Thank you for that. Chinook wins is 500K. Jeez. Hey, Tariq Khan, what's up, man? Always good to see you here. Thank you so much for joining us on this very humid night. Carl Raltz's housing solution, bonds, buy now. It's actually a very good point. I think we may have been buffering over here, so maybe I'll try to take a little bit of a detour down 36th Street as we head to Koreatown. But you know, whoever said that comment about bonds, I think it was Carl from Canada, that's actually not a bad idea. Because if you think about it, if you're a new, let's say, first-time home buyer, right? Or a potential first-time home buyer, this is probably some of the easiest times to save money for a down payment. Because if you leave your money in a bank or you leave your money in a money market, you're actually going to get a decent rate of return. Probably upwards of 5% or more. So yeah, it's a good point. I mean, if you're a first-time home buyer and you're looking to buy your first deal, maybe you want to do a house hack or a 2-family duplex, triplex, whatever it is, I think now is a really good time to save money. And that may sound like pretty obvious advice, but you'd be surprised. This is such a cool facade of this pub here. Midtown pub. But look, if you put your money in a money market, 5% compounded over, you know, the next 2 to 3 years, it's pretty significant if you're saving aggressively. Even if you just go to Treasury Direct, right? If you go to the Treasury's website, a 1-year Treasury, if you go to cnbc.com/bonds, if you look at the yield curve, a 1-year Treasury is almost 5.5%. That's a pretty good deal, okay? It's a pretty good deal. Yeah, crypto memes is plus money markets is better than a bank. It's back dollar for dollar. It's a good point. Yeah, I mean, look, I try to always reframe things in a positive light. Many people are complaining about the, interest rates being so high. But I think they need to zoom out a little bit more. This is the Morgan Library, by the way. This is one of my favorite museums in all New York City. This place is great. But I think they need to zoom out for a little bit more perspective on things. I'm sure that, many people in the chat, right, not to assume, but I'd assume when some of you bought your first home, maybe interest rates were 10% on a 30-year fixed. Right? That's not uncommon. So even with a 6.8% 30-year fixed, historically, that's actually not uncommon. So the way I frame it is we're actually going back to normal. What was not normal is a decade of artificially suppressed interest rates. That's not normal. To live in an environment of quantitative easing in perpetuity, that's not normal. That is modern monetary theory nonsense, which I am against. So letting rates normalize here is not bad. Dave Morrison's is 8% and 85 for me. See? Mortgage rates aren't 8% yet. Trecon says even a novice can do better in the stock market than 5%. I don't know about that. I mean, if you look at, well, I think if you're talking about trading with a sizable AUM, right, a sizable asset under management, you know, if you can achieve a 5% KGAR for 20 years, you're a pretty good money manager, actually. Like if you, let's say you're running $1 billion and you can consistently achieve a 5% KGAR for 10 to 20 years, that's pretty good. I mean, actively managing a portfolio, that's pretty good. I mean, depending on, you know, what your volatility is, that is not bad. I mean, if you look at the vast majority of hedge funds out there, many of them fail to beat the S&P 500 over the long term, and many of them blow up and go to zero, right? So I definitely get what you mean, Tariq, 100%. But if you look at the data with trading with a sizable AUM, even if you're running 100 million bucks, that is not bad, right? You know, just type in a compound interest calculator on Google, right? If you just go to Google and you type in compound interest calculator, if you punch in $100 million at 5% for 5 years, that is a fortune. Okay, so that's not all that bad. So, you know, what I'm thinking about is I want to try to track, and real quick before I ramble on, this is the Morgan Library. I would highly recommend anybody who has not gone here, you've got to go. Okay, this is on Madison Avenue and East 37th Street. It is such, I mean, so gorgeous in there. And many of the exhibits, I should say the art and the artifacts that are within the Morgan Library actually get transferred from time to time between the Henry Clay Frick Museum and here. So sometimes, if you're lucky, you'll actually be able to see some of the artifacts from the Henry Clay Frick collection that are on loan to the Morgan Library, which is right here, which is kind of cool. And you could just see a little bit of the spire of the Empire State Building. Has anybody in the chat been to the Morgan Library by chance? It's a very quaint and really nice block too. Love the architecture. Hey, buy the books. We'll check it out when I'm in New York City. It's a must check out, man. You're gonna love it. Buy the book. I would still recommend the Frick collection, even though the museum is technically closed down. So for those of you who don't know, I'll quickly explain it. If you look up Henry Clay Frick collection on Google, the museum is literally a house, okay, on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, right on 5th Avenue. So it's overlooking Central Park. And it was the home of Henry Clay Frick, right, during the Industrial Revolution. He made, you know, the equivalent of billions of dollars, right? You think about Henry Clay Frick, you think about the Rockefellers, Morgan, all made a fortune. And throughout his travels over the years, he's collected some of the most rare and fine artifacts from all over the world that he's decorated his home with. And when he died, I think it was in his will, he said, I want my home to be a museum for everybody to see. And that's exactly what it is. But unfortunately, here's the downside. It's so old, the place, but it's gorgeous on the inside, that it's gonna be closed for about 10 years for renovations, I think. If you just Google Henry Clay Frick collection, you could see it for yourself, but they've moved all of the artifacts and all of the exhibits, if you will, a couple blocks north on the Upper East Side. So you could still see all the exhibits. You're just not going to be able to walk around the gorgeous house, which is one of my favorite parts of the tour anyway. So would still recommend it though. Hey, Battery Graham says there's also a Frick Museum in Pittsburgh, which is a cluster of buildings including his home. Let me take a screenshot of that because I may be in Pittsburgh, and if I am, I'm gonna check that out. Oh, good. Ethan says the house is expected to reopen in late 2024. You know what I was getting it confused with? And I apologize for that. I was getting that confused with Federal Hall down on Broad Street on the corner of Wall Street. Federal Hall is the one that's going to be closed for 10 years, unfortunately. So that's where George Washington was inaugurated. The big George Washington statue overlooking the New York Stock Exchange. That is unfortunately going to be closed for renovations for 10 years. This is an awesome shot. We're standing literally in the middle of the street on Park Avenue, and you're looking all the way to Grand Central Station and the MetLife building. It's so cool. All right, but we're actually gonna walk the other way. So I gotta take you guys to Koreatown. Yeah, Otto's is the old Pan Am building. Sean says looks like it was maybe raining in New York today. This morning it was pouring raining. It was really coming down in buckets this morning. Hey, username is here. That's not true, username. I'll be in Canada later in August. I'm finally gonna be able to take my trip to Toronto, which I'm really excited about, by the way. I haven't been to Canada since I was a little kid. I love the country. I love Toronto, right? Huge city for finance. So I'm excited about it. I haven't been in a long time. I'm sure the city has changed a lot. I'm sure we have viewers from Toronto in the chat, but I'm excited about it. That's gonna be in late August. I'll be there for maybe about a week. So super excited about it. Username says you'll love it here. Yeah, I mean, when I was a kid, I remember I loved it. I'm trying to think of what I did. I only remember two specific things. I went to a Toronto Blue Jays game, and all I remember is the stadium, the roof would open, like the roof would retract, sort of open up. I don't know if it's the same stadium. And then I went up to the CN Tower, and there was this big, not really big, it was like a glass floor that you could stand on. But besides that, I was too young to really remember anything. So, you know, now that I'm old, hopefully I'll have a better time. Stephen Bates is same stadium. Okay, copy that. They still use the Sky Domes to Shady 901. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm not a big baseball guy, but it's always a fun time to, you know, see a game or something like that. Now, what I would really like to do, not to get too far off subject, but what I would really like to do is see a Maple Leafs game, hockey game. I never see a hockey game. And I would assume, right, since it's Canada, I mean, you guys are obsessed with hockey. How crazy would that be? Seeing a Leafs game? Oh my God, guys, look at this. It is a beautiful view of the Empire State Building from the east side. So we've pretty much seen the Empire State Building tonight from all angles. I see Jackie here, long time no see. Jackie, hopefully you had a good weekend. It's good to see you in the chat. Cindy Foley says hockey starts in late September. Copy that. Now, I think that would be an interesting statistic to look up. What is the most expensive sporting event to go to in terms of, if you had to gauge, hockey, baseball, soccer, right, as it relates to like MLS? So in the United States, what is the most expensive sporting event to get into? I think it's hockey. Because I went to look at some Rangers tickets once at Madison Square Garden. It was $225 for Rangers tickets. Does that sound right? Formula One, yeah. Oh, Carl Roth's basketball is expensive? Yeah, Ryan Beck says if you're not including a Taylor Swift concert, I think she's going to make about $2 billion on that. Good for her. Yeah, Jared says Formula One. Jared, Formula One is insanity. So they did the Formula One event in Miami this year, and I mean, it was crazy. Somebody posted a picture of the prices of just the food and the drinks on Twitter, and it was $18 for water. If somebody wanted to order like water for the table, it was $18 just for water. I mean, Formula One is really not even about the sport, in my opinion. It's probably just about the networking. Wow, Tariq Khan says, Tom, 2 people at an NFL game is $1,200. Holy crap. Yeah, football, true. I mean, you could go to an MLS game for like $11. It's funny, now that Leo Messi, I'm sure all of you know, Leo Messi is now in Miami. And if you wanted to see an Inter Miami game before they signed Messi, you could get tickets for like $25. Now you can't get tickets for less than like $200, which is wild. It definitely is the Messi effect, if you will. So this is 33rd Street. We're gonna go over one more. 32nd, or 2 more. Ooh, yes. Somebody said UFC. I think you may be right. I think now the UFC, I completely forgot about UFC. UFC definitely has to be the most expensive. You see those fights? Because if you think about, if pay-per-view is $50, at least I think it is, right? What is the average pay-per-view for a UFC event? Probably $50? Maybe 100? I mean, tickets could definitely be $1,000. Maybe we'll be streaming the Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg UFC throwdown. It's $80 for the pay-per-view? Interesting. JF says, yep, even home games against Inter Miami will be more expensive for sure, 100%. Wow, Mark, his front row was $3,500 at Madison Square Garden for WrestleMania. We streamed that, by the way. Well, not inside the stadium. It was outside. That was wild. There's tons of people there. Yeah, WrestleMania has like cult-like fans, if you will. But they're packing them in, right? So much for this recession that everybody called for. Every major sporting event is packed. Every concert is packed, right? Taylor Swift, I think she's set to make about $2 billion from her tour. Every show is sold out, right? Again, this sort of goes back to our conversation at the very beginning of the stream, that consumer spending is still very, very strong, but it's in different categories, right? Consumers have shifted their spending habits on physical goods to services, right, and experiences. And I think, going to a concert, going to WrestleMania, going to a Taylor Swift concert, those are all very expensive services that people are going to when everybody's been pounding the table about a so-called recession. This is a really nice apartment building here. This is an ultra luxury building, but it's very nicely tucked away. Plague Doctor says, but they are using credit, which is more expensive. That's true. You make a good point. That is if they're carrying a balance, right? But I guess they are. That was kind of a stupid comment by me. Credit card debt is the most expensive type of debt. Consumer debt, right? Now, what is the average, if you were to take the average, I'm sure somebody could Google this. What is the average interest rate now on credit cards? I think it broke 20%, right? Could somebody look that up? I think that's actually probably a really good data point to go off of. Because credit card debt, I mean, if you carry a balance, oftentimes it could be 15, 17, 20%. Credit card debt is a ripoff. Wow, TPAC 5000s is 23%. JPEX is 19. Yeah, it's high. This is our old WeWork here. Does anybody remember we used to start the live streams right here? On the corner of East 31st Street and Madison. We used to be right in there. Marks is 23.9%. Yeah, and I mean, not a lot of people know about it either. If you've ever looked at your credit card statement, it'll show you what your APY is. It's very expensive consumer debt. J49. Whoa. 30% on some cards at Citi. That is expensive. Now, it's most expensive on those starter credit cards like Discover, which we're actually going to hear from Discover Financial this week. They're reporting earnings. That's usually like the entry-level credit card for people that are looking to just build their credit. Usually a Discover card is like the entry level. Yeah, Tommy G says you should know the APY before opening an account. You would think. You would think, right? Now, Tommy G's 100% correct, but you would be surprised. Well, I'll just say that. I would even argue that the vast majority of people who are opening credit card accounts do not know what their APY is. You'd be surprised. Wow, John Kelly says, according to Forbes, the average rate is 24.58%. Whew. Yeah, that is just a travesty. Look at that, beautiful shot of the Empire here. Well, we're gonna find out this week, right? Speaking of credit cards, I think the two biggest issuers that are reporting this week is Discover Financial, and on Friday we're getting Amex, right? American Express will be reporting Friday, but generally speaking, Amex, American Express generally tends to service the, middle class or upper middle class, right? Many of the American Express cards, I believe, are not even technically credit cards. I think they're, what do you call them? Charge cards, where you have to pay off the balance in full every month. But it's still good data to look at, right? Now, one of the key categories that I look at in Bank of America, Discover Financial, Capital One, Citi, is delinquency rates. These are two really good Korean barbecue spots here. One is called Love, and the other one is called Baekjung. Very good spots. But you got to look at the delinquency rates, and they'll break it down by 30-day, 60-day, and 90-day delinquencies. We'll probably go over this when Bank of America reports on Tuesday. I think it was last quarter, Brian Moynihan, who is the CEO of Bank of America, says that they're still seeing credit card delinquencies below pre-pandemic. So long-term credit card delinquencies, which would mean, excuse me, like 90 days or more, are still below pre-pandemic, which is good, but the trajectory is actually picking up quite significantly. So the trajectory of those delinquencies are picking up, but we're still below trend as it relates to pre-pandemic. Hey, Black Valley's American average balance on credit cards is $5,700. I would actually think more than that, but I guess that's right. Joel PM says I pay off credit cards weekly, no fee concern here. Mark says credit unions have lower interest rates. Usually that's true. What do you guys think of this shot? If you want to see this for yourself, it's on the corner of East 32nd Street and 5th Avenue. This is pretty much in the heart of Koreatown. And we are going to walk directly through Koreatown tonight. Hey, Addison Robertson's, my APY was 29.99% in June. That's crazy. Isn't that wild? Now, I think credit cards were first invented in New York City. Now, JP Morgan, on their last earnings report, their gross margins were as high as some tech stocks. Did anybody see that? That's crazy. Jamie Dimon, right, regardless of what you think of the guy, I understand. I mean, Jamie Dimon, there's nobody, I think he is undoubtedly the best Wall Street CEO in our modern history. But I mean, by far. I mean, can you name another Wall Street CEO who's done a better job than Jamie Dimon? I don't think so. Now, Bill, have you guys seen this? Oh my God, look at all of this garbage. Now, Bill Ackman on Twitter has been really pushing the envelope to get Jamie Dimon to bid for his presidential run. Has anybody seen that? No, I don't think that would be a bad idea. I think generally Jamie Dimon tends to be very pro-America. He's a business guy. He knows how to run a business. And I think that's sort of what we need. We need a leader that people respect. And I think, you know, world leaders would respect the CEO of the most successful investment bank of all time, JP Morgan Chase. Any thoughts on that? Yeah, not to get too political. I understand a lot of the, you know, the negatives as well. But if you think about being an interlocutor, right? If you think about, you know, current President Joe Biden, former President Donald Trump, and you compare some of their speeches or speech patterns or even tonalities to, you know, like a Jamie Dimon, I mean, it's just not even a competition. Which makes sense, right? Because Jamie Dimon, investment banker, CEO, I mean, you got to be sharp, you got to come off like you're sharp as a tack. And I don't think there's a better communicator between those three. Jamie Dimon is obviously the best communicator by far. It's not even a competition. Addison says, what do you think of the most recent Bank of America news? What was the most recent Bank of America news? If it was something specific, I don't know. I haven't heard about it. What was the most specific Bank of America news? Are you talking about how they are fined for the, the fraud, similar to what Wells Fargo did when they were opening accounts? Wells Fargo had to pay tons and tons of in fees for fraudulently opening accounts without discretion from customers. Now, it's going to sound harsh, but that's sort of run-of-the-mill for these banks. And I'm not saying I agree with it. I actually detest it with every ounce of my body. But if you think of just the laundry list of fees that mega banks had to pay over the years, I mean, you'd be surprised, and the public doesn't really even know about it. I would look up, let me get away from this, actually. I would look up a lot of the metals spoofing. Right, so look at silver spoofing, gold spoofing. So a particular bank, BNP Paribas, which is a French investment bank. I have some friends there, so not to dump on them too hard, but they have been caught repeatedly, as well as JP Morgan Chase, of spoofing the metals market and manipulating prices of metals with the paper derivative. Right, so on Wall Street, you call it the paper. So if you've heard of like ticker symbol SLV, it's not the physical asset you're trading. You're not trading the precious metal. You're trading the derivative, right? And a derivative is essentially something that derives value from an underlying asset. But it's sort of the cost of doing business for these banks, right? JP Morgan Chase has been caught manipulating the metals market, spoofing BNP Paribas. So it's not like this is uncommon, right? Wells Fargo is opening accounts without customers' notice. So Addison says Bank of America caught undergoing fraudulent activity again. Yeah, I mean, not to say it's right, and it's definitely not right at all. All these banks, right? Has there been a bank that hasn't been accused in some way or convicted of some way in fraud? But what happens is they just pay a fee, right? They pay a fine and then, it's on to the next one, unfortunately. I think during the financial crisis, there was only one banker, one guy, went to prison during the great financial crisis, if you can believe that. Now, have you ever watched some of those old C-SPAN testimonies? They're wild, right? Interviewing some former managing directors at Goldman Sachs. They're literally on, record from emails and voicemails saying, yeah, we're going to sell this client this, SHI, E deal, right? Can't sort of swear on the live stream. And I think there was a congressman is like grilling this managing director at Goldman Sachs. He was like, well, how much of that, crappy deal did you offload to your customers? And they sort of just give a runaround. But yeah, only one banker, I believe, went to prison for the financial crisis. Now, I think the financial crisis is when it comes into play, or when the term was coined, moral hazard. I'm sure everybody knows that terminology, right? And we sort of had that moral hazard argument yet again pop up when the Silicon Valley Bank unfortunately collapsed, right? But we won't go into that whole diatribe again. We've covered that ad nauseum. But many people believe that the major banks shouldn't have been bailed out by our government, right? People would say that's crony capitalism, which I would agree with that. But then the other side of the argument is, okay, let's say if we didn't bail out the major banks in 2008, it would have been worse than the Great Depression. To which I say, yeah, it would have been. It probably would have been a lot worse than the Great Depression. But if you want to play by the rules of capitalism and not have corporate socialism, right, which is essentially what that was, that's the name of the game, right? That's the name of the game. People get hurt, people get burned. And essentially what happened, what was so disgusting about '08, not to sort of hammer on it, but what was so disgusting about 2008 is that all of these bankers were bailed out. Many of them still got their big bonuses, but the average guy and girl out there lost their homes. That's the thing that sucks, right? So Wall Street got the bailout and Main Street got the shaft. So I think that was the biggest sort of moral hazard. So the argument was, all of the people who created this problem, right, Wall Street, with their really egregious lending practices and adjustable rate mortgages, lack of due diligence, sort of cast the world into the greatest financial crisis we've ever seen. They get bailed out, but you get to lose your house. I think that is the cringe, in my view. At least that's how I perceive it. Yeah, the LT Prods is dangerous products, hurts people. If the cost of paying settlements is less than a recall, then the recall doesn't happen. Yeah, John Kellis is owed too much and the value tanked. Hey, vapors. New York City is so in debt, half commercial property, or half commercial is empty in New York City. No police taking the exam. People are leaving in droves. I think that's a little bit hyperbolic, but I do understand the sentiment and I get it. I think you made some good points about commercial real estate being in trouble, right, which we've talked about to the point of ad nauseum, but you're right? So for those of you who are unfamiliar with what's going on, particularly in New York City in terms of commercial real estate, office, is you're having a big flight to quality. So the Hudson Yards where we started the live stream, you're seeing a lot of businesses go to these Class A office towers, particularly in the Hudson Yards, on Park Avenue, 425 Park, Jamie Dimon's new building, 270 Park, which should be done in late 2024. And a lot of the older office buildings, like you see here, like this one, that were built in the 1980s, the 1990s, a lot of them are vacant, right? The highest vacancy rates that we have in New York City right now for office is in Lower Manhattan, which makes sense, right? Because if you're a New Yorker, you know that really no financial activity actually happens anymore in the financial district. That may sound wild to say, wait, so you're telling me the financial district is almost kind of irrelevant as it relates to like Midtown and Park Avenue when it relates to investment banking and family office, hedge funds? Yeah, kind of, pretty much. Since the introduction of algorithmic trading, quantitative trading, you saw a lot of the big broker dealers and the banks specifically migrate uptown. So in my world, right, I would actually characterize the financial district as Midtown and, Park Avenue, right? If you actually continue to walk straight up Broadway, you'll run into Morgan Stanley, right? If you go up even more, you'll run into Barclays Investment Bank, which just so happens that was the old Lehman Brothers. So when Lehman Brothers collapsed, if you've ever watched a documentary on the financial crisis, with all the big bankers walking out of the office holding cardboard boxes, that was right here, right outside the old Lehman Brothers, which part of the deal was Barclays took it over, that building, and so now it is a British investment bank is in there. But everything in terms of finance is uptown. The last standing major investment bank, I should say bulge bracket bank, on the physical street of Wall Street was Deutsche Bank, ticker symbol DB. And Deutsche Bank was at 60 Wall Street. They vacated the entire building. It's totally abandoned now. And they've moved to Columbus Circle, 59th Street, into the old AOL Time Warner Center. So you're right. It is a big problem. And it's an even bigger problem for the city's budget. Because if you think about the New York City budget, where the city gets a lot of its tax revenue is property taxes. But if rent rolls are going down and vacancies are going up, well, guess what happens to valuations? Valuations go down, and tax revenues go down. So you're right. I think a lot of the other stuff you said was a little bit hyperbolic, but that's fine. Hey, Kevin Ramsey, what's up? Says hello, Tom in chat. Good to see you, Kevin. Hey, Vinny Castellanos, good evening, Tom. On our way back home to Iowa, had fun in Staten Island. Congratulations, by the way, Vinny, on your sale of your house in Staten Island. That's awesome, man. I'm so glad that you were able to sell that for top dollar. And I think you'll be happy in Iowa. So congrats on the sale and congrats on your move too. Whoa, we've almost been streaming for 2 hours already. But if you guys have been enjoying the live stream so far tonight, feel free to leave a like on the video and click the subscribe button if you're new. This is another good shot of the Empire. We usually start these streams at 8:30 p.m. And if you want to connect with us offline, you could follow us on Twitter. I'm active there during the day, messaging a lot of you guys at Walks Wall Street. And you could also click the link in the description and sign up for our free financial newsletter on Substack. We periodically send that out with market updates as it relates to equities, fixed income, real estate. Oh, that's right, Hawaii. Yeah, we have 31,000 people here now, which I honestly can't even believe. So thank you all for joining. This has been a blast. 31,000 people, that's like Madison Square Garden. So thank you, everybody who's been watching and supporting over the last 2 years. It's been a lot of fun. The Big Delta guy. So I spent about a decade of my career in tech and telecom sales, most recently as a director of enterprise sales for a big tech company. So I ran the entire Northeast. So my territory was Philly all the way to Maine. So we would sell enterprise grade telecom and software to Fortune 500, Fortune 50, Global 2000 clients. But I don't do that anymore as of a couple months ago. I had a really amazing opportunity come my way that I could not say no to. And I think you guys will find it quite interesting. And this opportunity will allow me to spend more time and build out more of my portfolio of real estate in South Florida and in New York as well. And hopefully getting into the development side. So my goal is hopefully one day we'll be walking the streets in New York and we'll say, oh, this is, 1412 Broadway. This is a 50-unit condominium and it was developed by yours truly, Walks on Wall Street. I think that'd be kind of cool. So stay tuned for that. Hey, SoCal Lawrence, thank you so much for your generous $5 donation. Appreciate you. And I think I'm going to leave you guys off here because I got to get an early start to the week. Thank you all for joining us. Hopefully you had a very restful weekend. You're recharged and you're relaxed to hit it hard on Monday. It's going to be a busy week. Lots of financial earnings. We're going to hear from the home builders. We're also going to hear from the National Association of Realtors on existing home sales. So it's going to be a busy week. So hopefully you guys got the much needed and appropriate rest. We'll be back tomorrow live. Maybe we'll go to the Upper West Side tomorrow. Maybe we'll check out the Dakota up on 72nd Street. We haven't been there in a long time, so maybe we'll do that. All right, guys, thanks so much for joining. Western Mass Dave, appreciate it. Joan K, thank you so much. The LT Prod, Karina Thompson, Lisa, SoCal Lawrence. Have a good Sunday night. Hawaii, appreciate you. Chinook Wins, Greg. Thank you, Greg. Marcy M. UniJ23, Stephen Bay, Dusty Cole. Mark STR, Buy the Book. Wendy England, Richard Vogel, Josie, John Abraham, Muhammad. There's always a bull market somewhere. You just need to know where to look. Be safe, everybody. And we'll meet back here tomorrow night. All right, take care.